And how's it going, everybody? Welcome into another episode of the Couch GMs podcast. If you're a longtime listener, you're like, wait, that voice doesn't sound familiar. If you're watching over on YouTube, you see I have a special guest with me. George is not here. We brought our good friend Kempy back onto the show. You might remember him from the fan mock draft we did. He's been on before. He's our resident betting expert. Kempy, how the heck are you doing?
Hey, good, Cody. Thanks for having me on. I'm excited to talk football. We're winding down. It is December. In less than a month from now, fantasy champions will be crowned. So I'm ready to talk some football.
Absolutely. And most people, this will be their they have the Monday night game, but then they'll be in their final week of the regular season. So make or break for the playoffs. We'll get into all that. We'll talk through some waiver wires, recap week 13. But as always, it is a reminder to follow us on social media at the Couch GMs, Facebook, X, Instagram, TikTok. We hit over 500 followers there. So thank you for people joining us on the TikTok. And we are live Mondays and Thursdays at 6:30 p.m. Eastern right here on YouTube, Twitch, and Facebook. But Kempy, let's jump into what's happening. Alrighty, so what's happening around the league? We're going to break it down. And I kind of thought Sunday was not that eventful. Like, we had a really good Thursday slate with Thanksgiving. Monday, unfortunately, I know you're an Eagles fan. It was a good game, but not for you guys. And then I felt like Sunday just kind of let the air out. I don't know if it was we played too many good early matchups. So not too many big things. Any big takeaways for you around the Sunday slate, or even you want to go back to Thanksgiving?
I mean, you hit it right on the head there. The Thanksgiving games were awesome. The Black Friday game, entertaining, despite the Birds not getting the win there and kind of getting embarrassed once again. But overall, the Sunday slate was a little slow. I think we had some nice surprises in a few games. A few fantasy names came up and above, or more than projected anyway. So I know the Rams and Panthers game, we'll talk about some guys we could be picking up later, but I thought that game, as well as the Jets and Falcons, was the game to watch.
Yeah, Jets and Falcons. That's one of those games that, like, when you see it on the slate, it's like, two bad teams. No one's going to want to watch it. It goes down to the wire. Ends up being probably the most entertaining game at the 1 o'clock window, that or the Panthers, game that you mentioned. But just some news that came out of this weekend. The Vikings, they got demolished so much that they want J.J. McCarthy back because their undrafted free agent that they thought was going to save their season threw 4 interceptions. But they also moved on from veteran Adam Thielen. They traded back for him to get him back this year, but he has indicated this is his last year in the NFL, so he wants to go out for a contender. Don't blame him. I don't think he's going to make a big impact fantasy, but any teams that you think could be an interest to have him pick up if he wants to go to a contender?
I would say it's tough right now for a contender to go out and grab him. I didn't really think of any names when I saw him dropped. I'm kind of wishing him the best of luck. I almost thought that he would be just riding out his career here in Minnesota, for better or worse, kind of bring in some of those young wide receivers. But it is a frustrating situation right now in Minnesota, so I can't say I blame him for wanting out.
Yeah, me neither. I'm interested to see if any of the other veterans do the same thing, how they hold together. And I'm with you. There was not a team that I could think of that was like, oh, Adam Thielen could help them. The 3 teams that I initially thought of, but I feel like it's just getting a same player that they already have. And that was the Jaguars, but they just did Jacoby Myers. They have Parker Washington. They have Brian Thomas, who's been, underwhelming all year. But Adam Thielen's not going to make much of a dent there. Then I went to Buffalo, but they just added Brandon Cooks. Do they need another old veteran in that lineup? And then same with the Patriots, as they are competing right now. But between Booty, why am I blanking on the other guy's name? Mac Hollins and Stephon Diggs. It's like, do they need another aging wide receiver? So I'm interested to see if he gets his wish to play for a contender. Maybe he goes back to Carolina if you think they're real. But that is something we can talk about a little bit. But let's talk about some of those injuries that happened. And we'll start on the Thanksgiving game. First quarter, big Packers-Lions game. You hate to see Amon-Ra St. Brown leave with an ankle injury. The good news is he's only supposed to miss 1 to 2 weeks, but they have a short week, or I guess not a short week, but they get the full week because they played on Thanksgiving, but they're back-to-back Thursdays. And honestly, this game might be an elimination game for them. So missing on Ross St. Brown is huge. Did you have him anywhere? I know in our, DFS Thanksgiving thing we did on the show, he was my high-paid wide receiver. So I think I finished like 170th out of 200 in that league. So not a great week for me in DFS.
I had him in one league, and it was actually World Cup. Luckily, I still won the matchup, but that was a tough blow for them. It opened up a lot of possibilities for Jameson Williams. So that was a kind of nice indicator because I have him in a few other leagues. But yeah, I think it's going to be a tough sit for Dan Campbell and the Lions. If Amon-Ra, who I know has played through injury before, says he's ready and it's an elimination game, I think you got to send him out there.
Yeah, and you're right. He's a tough dude. He's gonna do everything he can to play, and they're aggressive enough. And this Dallas team, their defense is playing better. They're not as being exposed as much as they were at the beginning of the season. And we'll talk more about them on Thursday when we preview their matchup. But they could really use a guy like Amon St. Brown in a game that they need to win to keep their playoff hopes alive. Another big injury that could impact this week, Justin Herbert. We saw him leave the game. He came back. He played through it. But he ended up getting surgery here on Monday with that broken bone in his left hand. Now, he says he still expects to play. We'll have to see how it recovers. Once they do the surgery, it's always, question mark if he can go. But at least it doesn't sound like it'll be more than a 1 week thing if he does miss.
Yeah, and it almost sounded similar to Aaron Rodgers, where I think he's going to say he's able to go because it is the non-throwing. There seems to be a lot of non-throwing injuries or arm injuries this year, so that's a tough injury to figure out. Is it going to impact his game? If he takes one big hit, what could happen? So I could see the Chargers going in with a little more caution because they are set up right now for a nice playoff spot. But it would be tough to see the Chargers line up without him, to be honest.
Yeah, I think it'd be interesting. I wonder if if they could potentially get Amari and Hampton back, and like Harbaugh already wants to run the ball a lot. Like with him and Vidal, they get to play the 3-9 Cardinals. I wonder if they play it extra safe this week since they already are sitting at 9 wins. We'll have to wait.
They're actually playing Georgia's second favorite team on Sunday for this week, so it is a big game. And it's going to be a tough game for George. I can already tell the internal battle. Maybe that's why he's not here today, just getting prepped for it. They are playing the Eagles.
I got my LA teams confused when I was looking at the schedule. I saw the Rams are playing the Cardinals, but you're right. The Chargers are playing. And that also makes it, an interesting thing too for the Monday night game with him of what do you do with Ladd McConkey? What do you do with the other wide receiver weapons? If he can't go on Monday night, do you trust them with a guy like Trey Lance in a game that you have to win? That's going to be a tough one as we break it down. But we're still talking about week 13. That's week 14 stuff we can get to. We mentioned the Vikings getting obliterated. JJ McCarthy is expected to be back this week, so that would be some good news maybe. I'm sure you've seen the stats on X, as they like to call it these days, that both McCarthy and Bosmer over the last 2 weeks have a lower QBR than if they would have spiked the ball into the ground each play.
I saw that.
So it's not looking great for Minnesota. And then Aaron Jones on top of it is day-to-day with a shoulder injury, but they don't expect that to be serious. I know we talked about a little bit at the top with Adam Thielen, but do you think the Vikings are just done? Do you think they could play spoiler in any of these divisional games coming up, or is this, the wagon's fallen too far away from the horse?
I think at this point, the wagon's too far away from the horse. I think that they were going down a bad path with just trying to cover up injuries for JJ McCarthy. I mean, Carson Wentz was starting at one point. They balance out options to see what they could do. They're losing wide receivers because they're not in contention, or at least they don't think they'll be in contention. It's not good. And on top of it, getting beat by the guy you let walk out the building last year in Sam Darnold. That stings a little bit. I do have a fantasy question, though. With Jones being out, if you are a Mason Jordan owner, what's your thought?
If he misses time, I don't know if he's going to miss time. Now they do play the Commanders this upcoming week, so that is kind of a positive matchup for a Jordan Mason. But that offense is just struggling so much. It kind of feels like, even like Quinshon Judkins. Now this week might be good to play him as he gets to face the Browns, but that offense doesn't score a lot of points. And we've seen that with some other teams too, like Jaylen Warren with the Steelers. That offense has struggled. Even Bijan, because all Algier gets the goal line work and the Falcons don't score enough. So it's one of those things. I don't know if I'm going to chase, a Jordan Mason week 14 in my fantasy playoffs, just because he's going to be the starter if Aaron Jones misses. feels very Mike Boone-ish. Same situation with Dalvin Cook a few years ago. Missed the last week. Mike Boone was supposed to be the guy that everyone claimed to the waiver wire, and then didn't do anything. It's kind of how
And
I feel
CJ
about this.
Ham mixed in there too.
CJ Ham, I think he's the one that scored the touchdown just to irritate everybody.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I think I'm passing on, Jordan Mason this week, unless you're in like a desperate situation. We do have 4 bye weeks as well. But speaking of those Commanders, they might not get Jaden Daniels back, even though he's still not cleared for contact. This is still an interesting situation to me that he didn't end up on IR. They're still like rolling it back. But now that it's the 3-9 Washington Commanders, do you think there's a point where they're just like, hey, you messed up your elbow pretty bad. Let's not risk it. Get you ready for next year.
Yeah, I could see that at this point. I know Dan Quinn already got critiqued because of the injury happening in a game that didn't matter. If something were to happen again in a season that doesn't matter, that makes it even worse or makes the 2020 or 2026 season in jeopardy. I think that could be a big issue. I will say I was pretty impressed with the recap of last night's game, the Sunday night game, where Marcus Mariota, as the Sunday night crew put it, was able to kind of support some weapons on that team with like your Terry McLaurin's, your Zach Ertz had over 100 yards, almost a touchdown. So
you got a nice snag?
Yep. Are you concerned at all about your Washington tools, or do you feel like you can still roll them out?
I think it hasn't been great because he's been injured. And I think we even talked about this offline this week, like the Terry McLaurin, like what do you do with him? And that's kind of the one where it's like, I'd rather go down swinging with Terry McLaurin than some of the guys we might even talk about on the waiver wire. Mariota is at least a vested veteran that knows how to play the position at some level. It's not a Max Bosmer on the other side that's never played before. Zach Ertz, I think, has been, as about as consistent as, middling tier tight ends can be. And I feel like he gets an uptick with Mariota. The running back situation is still too hard to figure out there in my mind. But they put up a lot of, yardage on a pretty good defense last night. So that gives you some confidence again, if Terry McLaurin is your guy next week. Alrighty. And then one last injury to mention, Jaden Reed, who had his practice window open, I believe 2 weeks ago. So he could still miss this game and then get activated, but they are going to give him the week to see if he's ready to go as the Packers are set to face off against the Bears. And they could use a Jaden Reed back. It also sounds like Matthew Golden could potentially play. So maybe getting some offenses back for Green Bay. Any injuries that you saw or any other teams or matchups you want to talk about from the Week 13 slate?
No, I think not anybody that we're not going to hit on a little later in the show. I know we have a few names for the waiver wire that stood out. I saw this interesting fact today. I reminded to listen to it. Mm-hmm. Bears, if they lose to the Packers this week, did you see that stat?
I did not.
1 seed, if they win. If they lose against the Packers, they will go all the way down to the 7 seed. I don't know. I just heard that today. I think it was on another podcast, but that would be a crazy jump for a team that is in the hunt right now.
Yeah, actually, I didn't hear that stat, but it makes sense because the stat I did hear was the Bears currently have 3 losses sitting in the current 1 seed. The 49ers are current the 7 seed. They have 3 losses. So everybody in the NFC playoff picture right now has 3 losses. So that's just a very fascinating situation to be in. And I just think this NFC is going to be so competitive down the stretch. That's why I think this Cowboys-Lions game is so crucial this week, because I think it's going to be hard for one of those teams to, if the Cowboys get to 7 losses, or even if the Lions get to 6, it's like, how do you make up those 3 other losses, especially when you've lost to teams like Green Bay in the past for the Lions. So that's gonna be interesting. And there's a lot of good, battles, both AFC and NFC side, whether that is the Panthers and the Buccaneers or the 3-way tie that we're now seeing. I guess we didn't talk about the injury, but that came out last week that Daniel Jones is playing through a broken or fractured bone in his leg. And it definitely seemed to affect him on Sunday. And now they're no longer in first place. They lost to the Texans, who are only a game behind them. And that AFC South used to be the laughingstock. And the Titans are still trying to keep it that way. But the other 3 teams are making it pretty interesting down the stretch. That's a division I'm kind of looking forward to from an outsider perspective.
Yeah, I think this whole entire situation right now with the league, when all the competitive teams right now and all the teams that genuinely have a shot to make the playoffs, it's going to be awesome for fantasy managers as well, because that means your guys are giving it all. Hopefully you're not playing week 18, but at least building up to that point, every game should be competitive.
No, completely agree. And even like the this past week, like a week ago, everyone's like, oh, the NFC is really good, but the Rams are the best of the best. A week later, they drop to the Panthers. So like, and this year has been more any given Sunday than any year that I can remember, and it's been fascinating to watch. It's also made fantasy extremely difficult because the players have been so inconsistent. But speaking of inconsistency and stuff, why don't we get into our reality check segment? Alrighty, if you are a new listener, or for Kempe, even though I know he listens to every episode, reality check is kind of our version of reactions, Monday takeaways, maybe boldish takes, however you want to look at it. And let's just start here. I have a couple questions teed up, and we'll talk about them. Are the Colts in trouble?
I think they are. And I say this because obviously we spoke about the fractured fibula, and they did not look great against the Texans. And don't get me wrong, the Texans have a great defense, but it just felt like they were in trouble for most of the game. I am also concerned because of the fact that they do not have the tiebreaker on America's either most loved or hated team. And I'm not talking about the Cowboys. I'm talking about the Kansas City Chiefs, which we can talk about in a little bit if they're still going to be alive. But I think they're in trouble at this point because that South division, like it is great this year. And it's nice to see a mix up.
No,
what are your thoughts?
I can completely agree. Like, I think they're in real trouble now. I think the Daniel Jones injury is real. I'm pulling up their schedule quick, kind of just look at it. So this week they have Jacksonville, the current leader in the AFC South. Then they have Seattle, tied for the best record in the NFC, San Francisco, Jacksonville again, and Houston. A brutal slate to finish the year, which they're going to need to pick up wins. Hopefully they can beat Seattle and San Fran for our sakes as NFC North fans. But the other big thing for me is, like, 4 weeks ago, we were talking about Jonathan Taylor as, like, could he finally be the guy to be a non-quarterback MVP after so many years? And yeah, he did have that big game against the Falcons, but the other 3 games, he's had less than 85 yards. He's had no touchdowns in 3 of the 4 games. And he's been struggling, and he was the real catalyst to get them going. I don't know if teams have figured him out, if they've, he's gotten tired, he hit a wall, what it is, but that's not even big for the Colts playoff hopes. That's big for people that had rode him in fantasy, might have great records, and now you're getting to the playoffs and you're like, man, my best player is not playing his best football. That's definitely scary.
Mm-hmm.
Alrighty, another reality check question. Coming off their big win, are the Panthers legit playoff contenders? Because you're going to start seeing them on the in the hunt thing on the graphics. We're going to see like crazy for the next weeks, but are they legit playoff contenders?
I think that they are. I have loved what I've seen out of Bryce Young so far. He took a huge step up this year. I think that they have the tools. They have the running backs. They have the wide receivers. I think they could be legit. Their defense, correct me if I'm wrong, kind of middle of the pack right now. So it's tough to say where they're going to go on each given game, but they just beat what everybody was putting as the Super Bowl champs for the year. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think they're a legit playoff contender at this point. I don't know. I think when I say legit, I think they're going to have to go through their division. I don't think the NFC South is getting 2 teams. So it's going to be between them and the Buccaneers. Luckily, they play them 2 times in the final 3 weeks of the season, which will be huge for playoff seeding for sure. And you mentioned them beating the Rams, and this is just a couple weeks removed when they shocked the NFL by beating the Packers. So they now have 2 of the biggest upsets on the season. They get to play the Buccaneers twice. Dave Canales has that team rolling. They do have they're on bye this week. We have 4 teams on bye, so unfortunately that does not bode well for win and get in games. But between the Saints, the Buccaneers, and they have Seattle on there, that will probably be a loss. But can't even rule that out the way they're upsetting teams. So this Panthers team, a little bit of a shocker for sure, but I like how they've been playing over the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, I think they can sneak in and win the South, especially Bucks kind of hung on there for a sec against the Cardinals. So they don't necessarily blow me away. They have the weapons. Maybe they'll get healthy again. But I think the Panthers at this point, it's their division to lose.
I think I agree with you, and I can't believe I'm saying that. Even a couple weeks ago, I'm like, oh, this Panther. Like going into that Packers game, like, oh, it's the Panthers, not realizing that they were 500, not realizing that they have, because they got blown out the week before, so it's like hard to take them seriously. But they are finding the groove late. Before we do our next reality check question, we do have a fan question, a little bit of a payback. Because when I was out, I did this to George. George is jumping in the comments. He's supposed to be enjoying dinner with his wife for her birthday. Happy birthday, Bree. But he says, hey, guys, love the show. Non-fantasy question. Is cereal a soup?
Yes, it is.
I will say no, it's not. I'll be a little bit different. This question stems from when I was out 2 weeks ago. I jumped into the show real quick, asked if a hot dog was a sandwich. Now we're going to ask cereal is a soup. My only definition of this is a soup you technically cook in the broth. Cereal, you add the milk in after the stuff's already there. So that's how I'm going to defer it. If you want to call it a soup, no harm, no foul. Alrighty. Let's you want to add anything else there? Are we good to move on?
I think my mind will be buckled if I keep going into that. So I'm ready to move on.
We can go down a long rabbit hole about cereal and soup. Now, if you've been a long time listener of the show, you remember our first season, George had a segment called Quotes of the Week, and we would find the most random, ridiculous things that these coaches would say. So this is a little homage to that. And it's going to talk about the Kansas City Chiefs and their playoff chances. But Andy Reid said that they are going to tickle your tonsils on every play. One, we don't have to go into what that means because that could get us the explicit rating or something like that. But can the Chiefs tickle your tonsils on every play?
Yeah, this year, I can't believe that came from Andy Reid, but this year, honestly, it's exciting to see Patrick Mahomes get elevated to a fantasy relevant quarterback. Last year, the record was dominant, the team was dominant, but the fantasy stats weren't there. It's exciting to see that with the weapons they have between Rice, Xavier Worthy, Hollywood Brown sneaking in there, obviously Kelsey. So yes, the Chiefs offense tickles tonsils, I guess. But
whatever.
Yeah, I guess whatever that means. Yes, they tickle tonsils.
But all right, so let's talk about their playoff chances because I know it is not looking great for them. They lost to the Cowboys on Thanksgiving. I believe that put them back at 500. They are clearly third in their division, so it's really, can they sneak in as that third team? Now the AFC is not as competitive, but we talked about 3 teams in the AFC South, obviously 2 teams in their own division, but you mentioned the Colts not having the tiebreakers over the Chiefs, and they could potentially start reeling here with injuries and their schedule. Are you able to say the Chiefs are done, or have you just seen them come back too many times that you can't rule that out until it's officially, you get the Chiefs mathematically eliminated graphic?
Yeah, I need to see it for it to happen. If you asked me 2 weeks ago, I'm like, yep, this team's gone. They're not going to do it. But the way the math is lining up right now and the kind of downfall of the Colts, I think that will be their only ticket to the dance at this point because I believe the Chiefs have lost to the Jags. They've lost to the Texans, or not yet the Texans, but the Bills they've won or lost against. Sorry, words are tough.
No,
but either way, the only tiebreaker they have the advantage over is the Colts. So if the Colts go down and the Chiefs go up, that's their way in.
Yeah, and I'm just trying to think of it like, so at this point, we assume the Patriots are going to make it. We assume the Broncos are going to make it. Let's just say the Jags are going to make it. And then the AFC North, that's another conversation on which team. But it only seems like one of those teams are going to make it. But pick the AFC North winner. And then you have the Bills and the Texans as the other 2 teams and the Chargers. So really, like, it's hard to find a spot for them to make it because even if the Colts fall, that puts them as team 8. But, like, can the Texans, continue this run? Their defense is really good, but their offense has struggled. Like, it's hard to find a spot for them. But the New York Times playoff predictor or whatever, still gives them a 36% chance. So not great. But when it's Patrick Mahomes, Andy Reid, they're not the defending champions, but they've been there before. I don't think anybody wants to see them, because if they get in, it's going to start being like, okay, are they going to go on a magical run again? And no one wants to see that. So maybe they'll tickle our tonsils and we'll be super excited and screaming for them as we go there. But I mentioned the AFC North. And Joe Burrow came back. The Bengals balled out. Their defense actually played well against the Ravens. Can Joe Burrow come back and save the Bengals' playoff hopes?
I do not think so. And it's not Joe Burrow, because it is on the other side of the ball. It is that defense that I don't see that defense being able to stop teams consistently. I mean, we saw it in the beginning of last year, where I think the Bengals scored 3 or 4 games in a row of 30 more points and lost. It's tough for me to look at that team and be like, oh yeah, Joe Burrow's going to score enough points for them to win. Defense looked great against the Ravens. They got a little lucky with the fumble into the end zone. Mm-hmm. But overall, I would say no. I'm excited though, because at least it's going to bring up some more fantasy relevant players and action, hopefully over the next couple weeks.
Yeah, and I'm just looking at some of these schedules here. So obviously, for the Bengals to have a shot, they have a 6% chance. So I said the Chiefs had 36. They have a 6% according to the New York Times playoff predictor. But their schedule, if they can beat Buffalo this week and Baltimore the next week, they should win out. And that's what they're going to have to do. Obviously, that's a big if with their defense over the next 2 weeks, because they also lost to the Jets, Bears, Pittsburgh, and stuff like that at the beginning of the season. So if they can win out. But then you have the Ravens on the other hand. The Ravens and Steelers are tied for a 2-game lead over them. The Ravens and Bengals split. The Ravens and Bengals have 1 game left. Obviously, the Bengals won on Thanksgiving. Bengals and Steelers had split. Like Kempy said, words are hard. So let's just the Ravens, they get to play Pittsburgh 2 more times. That's where it gets fascinating. If the things can crack the right way, those odds might go up. But it's going to take, I think, a miracle. But it, like you mentioned, it's fun to see Joe Burrow back out there getting those weapons involved. No Trey Hendrickson this week is going to be a big loss, as he still does with it. We don't know what's going to happen with T. Higgins as he is going through the concussion protocol. Luckily, they get the mini bye, so hopefully that's enough time to get him back, because he didn't even play on Thanksgiving night. He missed 1 game already, so hopefully he is back, but he is still in the protocol. But that's pretty much the reality check segment. Let's get into the meat and potatoes of this show, and we'll talk about some waiver wires to help you win your Week 14 matchup. Alrighty, Kempy, before we jump into some names here, I have to ask you this. We play in a couple of leagues together. We play in some leagues not with each other. Has this been one of the weirdest waiver wire for you? Like, I feel like in all my fab leagues, I have a good portion back left. I've been waiting for that big guy, that top guy, hit or miss. Probably the least amount of moves I've seen. Just like hasn't been any name that I'm like, man, I really want that guy.
Honestly, it not a lot, and I can't really speak for it because I have $0 of fab left in the league of record that we're in, because I have just been like, I don't think there's going to be another name to pick up. I don't see there being a name that is above and beyond. So it's kind of just like I went for the guys I wanted because it has been so dry. But yeah, it has been kind of brutal overall. You got your handcuff here and there, but no splash injury that that is going to elevate a guy to the next level. So no, I would think it's a pretty dead year.
Yeah, I agree with that, and hopefully that stays the way. No one wants to see injuries anytime, but especially as we enter the fantasy playoffs, you don't want to see your top guys going out and having to rush to the waiver wire and whatnot. But let's talk about some waiver wire additions. We might add some extra names in here just to keep an eye on as well. Typically, we go for guys under 60%. I'll throw a quarterback out there. I feel like quarterback is a tough one because they're either owned to play every week or you're picking matchups and streaming. But Trevor Lawrence, he had a big game against the Titans. Obviously, that was the Titans. He gets to go against the Colts this week, and they're not going to have Sauce Gardner because he strained his calf leg, and they're reeling like we talked about. So he'd be the guy that I'd probably pick up this week because there's just not a lot of great options out there. CJ Stroud was another name. He has not been great since he's been back. He had less than 10 points this past week, but it's Chiefs Sunday Night Football. If you need a guy spot start, it's not a terrible matchup.
I love the offensive tools that Trevor Lawrence has now found himself in. And there's been some weeks that it's been brutal, but now he's got Brian Thomas Jr. back. He's got Jacobs, or who am I thinking of?
Jacoby Myers.
Yeah, new Jacobs there. Jacoby Myers is back, caught a touchdown this week. Strange, the tight end, is there. Parker Washington was hurt with his hip, but he could be another name in there. Those are 4 offensive tools that can really help Lawrence become a top-tier quarterback.
No, I like that a lot. Brenton Strange is actually the tight end that I wanted to mention too. He got back this past week. He caught a touchdown, had 5 targets, 4 catches. That was, an impressive return from him. And, they like to use the tight end there as well. But those are the hard positions. Running back, it's a little bit more interesting this week. I think the big name is Chuba Hubbard. He took back over the lead number of touches over Rico Dowdle this week. I don't know how consistent that will be, but he was dropped a lot, and he's under the 60% threshold. So he's a guy, if he's available, I'm going out and picking up. Even if I'm not going to play him, I just don't want him on someone else's team.
Mm-hmm. And I am a Chuba drafter. I have owned him. I've held on to him, just waiting for some sort of sign of life. This game gave me hope, but it also kind of made me upset because now I have to debate myself on Sunday. Do I want to start Chuba Hubbard? And at this point, I think I have to see it one more week because he outsnapped Rico Dowdle, I think 38-17 or something like that. So he's definitely an enticing name, and we've seen he can be a big time producer.
Yeah, and he still has that team captain patch on him. He was still a guy, like, he took the quote unquote benching, but he was also coming off injuries, and now I just wonder if he's like now back fully healthy, and you're starting to see, oh yeah, Hubbard was the better player. Dowdle gave a little bit of a boost, and I think they're still going to both be used. But you saw the explosiveness from Hubbard on that, out swing pass that he took. What was it, 30 plus yards for a touchdown? So he's definitely the guy I'm targeting this week. Anything else you want to add on Chuba?
No, I think we're going to go to the next guy.
Perfect. The next guy, we flirted with this guy before. It's been hit or miss, but you have to mention him when the team puts up not one but 200-yard rushers. Kyle Monangai of the Chicago Bears. They want to run the football. We've seen Ben Johnson support 2 relevant starting running backs and David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs before. I'm not saying Swift or Monangai is on the same caliber as either of those two, but you've at least seen this system support 2 running backs. Monangai is getting more and more work. We saw Ben Johnson push out DeAndre Swift before in the past. Again, not saying that's going to happen this year, but Monangai, at least at the bare minimum, needs to be a handcuff, but probably a guy you can start in a flex spot if needed. Although defense is pretty good against the run, but they did just lose starting D tackle Devontae Wyatt on Thursday, so could mean some big runs up the middle.
It'll be tough to see with the Packers defense as well if they can stop. If that's the same system going into the Packers game this week, it is tough because I completely agree. I think it's the Ben Johnson offense where now he has his 2 guys. They're guys that are going to have high ceilings, but you might also get them with low floors because it might be a week for the other guy. So it's kind of a risky start, but it's definitely somebody that I would want to have on my team in case anything were to happen to Swift. And you could plug in because he will be the guy.
And then the last running back I think we should mention as the potential to pick up is Rams running back Blake Corum. This isn't so much of what he did this past week, but it is worth monitoring the situation with Kyren Williams. He did leave the game for a little bit. He did return, but he did leave the game banged up. They're saying it's not considered serious. This Rams team, they have the wins, though. I would not be surprised if they gave him a week of rest or limited his snaps over the next week or two. I mentioned when I figured out which team was the right team, they're going up against the Cardinals this week. If they get out to an early lead, could they pull a Kyren and let Blake Corum carry the workload kind of situation? So again, another risky play. But if you were the Kyren owner, I would definitely prioritize getting him as the backup, at least for this week for sure.
Yeah, rostered in 2% of the leagues. Do you want to see him on anybody else's team? If Kyren is out for whatever reason, you do not want to face him in the playoffs. You got to put the waiver bid in.
All right. And then at wide receiver, I have 5 names here, but I'm going to not bench. I'm going to group the first 3 together. They all had big games, whether it was Thanksgiving or Sunday. A lot of it was explosive plays, but Christian Watson, Adonai Mitchell, Devon Vele, that's Vele of the Saints, Adonai Mitchell of the Jets, not the Colts anymore, and then Christian Watson of the Packers. Watson had the big touchdown play that we all saw on Thanksgiving. Adonai Mitchell, I believe, had 10 targets or more and over 100 yards and a touchdown. Vele had a couple big plays, all over 18 fantasy points this past week. Any of these guys intrigue you enough to go out and get, as you think they might be a part of something more down the stretch, especially like Christian Watson coming off of the injury, Adonai Mitchell on the new team. Vele is on a new team too. Just happened earlier in the season. Or is it like, hey, these are all big play guys. They're going to have their weeks, and then next week it could be 3 points.
I think I really like the development of Adonai Mitchell. He interests me because he is going to be that wide receiver 2 on the Jets. And while Tyrod Taylor's the quarterback, he has produced a big game just last week. I think he's capable of more as well if they can find that connection. Being new to the team as well, it's going to take a few weeks, and I'm hoping that this past week is a good indicator of things to come.
I completely agree with you. Of those 3, Adonai Mitchell is the one that intrigues me the most. Obviously, I'm wearing a Packers hoodie. I've been a big Christian Watson fan from the beginning, and I just don't know if his fantasy value is going to continue. He seems to be getting more and more work, but we talked about at the top of the show, Jaden Reed could be back, Matthew Golden could be back, and we could go back to the Packers offense. Every person getting 4 targets, and it's just hoping for the touchdown. So I don't know if I'm chasing the Christian Watson points, the Adonai Mitchell one, I could be intrigued. And then Vele, I think he falls into that trap that we talked about with some of the running backs. Like the Saints offense isn't very good. Like their touchdown opportunities are so limited. It's going to have to be, a good game for them to get it. So I wouldn't go after that guy. Unless you need a spot start during you're in those deeper leagues or you're just hit with buys in this week, then he could be a potential option. But you actually threw a name on this list too, Jaden Higgins of the Houston Texans. Why'd you add him in here?
He has been getting the looks the past 2 weeks, but with both Davis Mills and CJ Stroud now. I believe he was 5 for 5 this week on targets and receptions. The week before, he had 9 targets. I think he has now elevated himself to be that wide receiver 2 in Houston. Obviously, was Nico Collins taking that wide receiver 1 spot. But I think that he has the capabilities of rookie. And I think the Texans know what they have with him. So I think he is a guy that you want to watch.
No, I like that one for sure. I appreciate you bringing that to my attention because he's a guy that went under my radar. And let's see if you just said you don't have any fab lists. Maybe a guy can go from you in our league of record. One last name to mention, Mike Evans. Now, he's probably on your IR spot in your leagues, but some leagues don't have IR spots. He's only 64% owned, so that means in over 35% of leagues he's available. So just check his name out. He might begin practicing this week. So he's a guy that if he's out there, he should at least be picked up at this point. But we got a couple fan questions. I Smarty from YouTube. He has 2. We're going to start with the one. He said, you guys said you would want to pick up Blake with the Kyron Williams, potential missing time, have to wait and see. Is he worth dropping Alvin Kamara for? Which I know sounds crazy, but I know Alvin Kamara, he's also been dealing with some injuries himself and then just has had a down season for you. So what are your thoughts? Would you drop Alvin Kamara for Blake Corum if you are the Kyron owner?
That is a tough question. And I love the handcuff of Blake. Kamara, though, I have to look more into that injury timeline. Last I saw it had a question mark if he could come back. Do the Saints want to start him again if he's heading out the door? Or do they want to start getting the young guys in like Neal? I think I'm holding on to Kamara, but that is tough. I think one more. No, I'm taking Blake. I changed my mind. We're going for it. The impulse. This is why I have 0 fab budget, by the way. Impulse.
No, I think that's. I think it's okay because it's tough because the injury says it could be as early as week 14. It could be as late as week 16. Obviously, he got hurt against the Falcons, only 3 carries for 11 yards. But Alvin Kamara doesn't have 100 yards rushing this season. He doesn't. He only has 1 touchdown on the season. I think that's some name value there that he still holds on to. So I'm with you. I would drop Blake Corum I would drop Kamara for Blake Corum at this point. The injuries, the lack of production. I mentioned it with Bailey. This Saints offense just doesn't score enough. I'd rather have the safer handcuff and Kamara stealing a spot in my starting lineup because I'm still thinking this guy should be good when he hasn't been. But your second question, I saved this for the second one, even though you asked it first. What FAB percentage would you bid on KC's defense? You have the playoff bye locked in. So you get the Texans and the Titans matchup for week 16 and 17, which is a great, thing. So before we answer the FAB question, this is just a good PSA for anybody that has a playoff spot in line, or even if you're fighting to get in. Obviously, you're not going to start everybody on your bench. It's a good reminder to say, hey, let's start looking ahead at some of these defensive matches. Those quarterbacks I've been streaming every week, which ones have plus matchups in the playoffs? Obviously, you have to get there. Don't get too cute and not make the playoffs by doing this. But like our friend over on YouTube, they already have the playoff spot locked up. Even if it's not a buy and it's just a spot, start looking ahead. So what FAB percentage would I spend on the Kansas City defense so you get that good matchup? Honestly, the Titans one is the one that's most enticing. The Texans, I think their numbers they look better against them because of the couple games with Davis Mills. Obviously, CJ Stroud has not been elite or good. Their offense has struggled. So, but at this point, and like we talked about, that hasn't been a lot. Like, I'm okay spending, heck, 20, 30%. And if you have a lot of FAB left, like, and you can go up to 50%, or if you have a little about, you might have to, like, if you only have $20 of FAB left, you might have to spend 10, 15. But if you got 60 left, like, and you want to spend 35, like, I'm okay with that too. They have a really good playoff schedule. So I like that you bringing that up. And that's kind of where do you disagree or have a different take?
Well, as somebody that has $0 left in our league of record, I would probably be the worst person to listen to. But I can say, given your situation and that you have a bye, you're guaranteed to be in that Final Four. Consider the other teams. Look at their defenses. See who they have. If they have the Texans, if they have the Steelers, if they have a bunch of teams that they're probably going to start no matter what, maybe you bid a little bit less to save some of the FAB money. Because you are now technically in the top 4 of the league. Check out the teams remaining to see if they have a consistent starter defense. If they do, maybe don't spend as much. But if they don't, I would consider spending up because you don't want them to have them.
No, that's actually a great point. Like, if the teams that you're looking like you're going to face, they have the Broncos, Seattle, New England might still be up there. These teams that they're playing week in and week out, maybe you don't have to spend as much FAB. But hopefully that works out for you. Hopefully you have a good rest of your season, and congrats on already locking up a playoff spot. That's impressive to do for itself here. I know this isn't, oops, I hit the wrong button. I know this is waiver wire section. But with the playoffs coming up, I kind of want to ask you like a hot takey question for fantasy football. And I know every league is a little bit different, but what is your thoughts on leagues that, like, once teams are eliminated or even once the playoffs start, limit or not allowing the players that are limited to even be involved in the waiver process, or reseeding waivers so that the playoff teams get first dibs? What are your kind of thoughts on that whole situation in general?
So I think it comes to a league-to-league situation. I have a league right now where it's a dynasty league, and we had this conversation this week, and we're like, hey, maybe we should lock the teams that are out of it so that way they're not making moves or sealing guys. I don't think you can do that in a dynasty because every team is competitive from the end point of this year to the draft of next year and so on. Redraft leagues, I think, are a different story. I have no problem locking the teams as what they are because, unfortunately, you're not the main part of it, and as much as you don't want to win the toilet bowl, that's the team that you have. I do like the reseeding though, because it is still giving those teams a shot as well. But what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I've been talked more into the reseeding option. Because I know like everyone like preaches play to the end, stuff like that. Not everybody does. And some leagues have been together forever and they have fun punishments, whether it's the Waffle House challenge you see on TikTok or just, getting to pick the team's name, or they have to wear something stupid to the draft party. And if you get one of those, like I have a hard time saying like lock the waivers for the people that guys like there's something on the line, whether it's not, of true value, but there's something on the line. So that's where I've been talked into reseeding. But for a long time, I was just keep them open. That's a part of it. But I've also then seen where, teams that is 2-9, not even playing that week, someone gets hurt, they get the top waiver wire. And this is why I think Fab is such an important part of fantasy football. Like, you don't have this issue as much with Fab, because if you're the owner that only has $10 Fab left and you're mad that the person that's not even in the playoffs spent $60 on Fab, well, that's probably why they're not in the playoffs, but they had the Fab left. That's a part of the system, and so be it. So just a fun little situation as we approach the playoffs I wanted to mention. But before we get out of here, let's talk about this Monday night football game. Giants at Patriots. Giants are 7.5-point favorites, over under 46.5. It sounds like Jackson Dart is returning. I have not checked Twitter yet to see if the inactives are out, but I will do that. But what are your initial thoughts of this game?
I think this is going to be a massive game for Travion Henderson. The Giants, so a couple stats I saw before the show, last in explosive plays given up. They are last in yards per carry. They are last in yards before contact. And they have a 30th, this is kind of a weird stat, but they're 30th in stuff rate. So I think they're going to have a tough time stopping the run. Now, the question, will it be Travion or will it be Ramondre? Ramondre came back last week and saw 31% of the team snaps. So I think that Ramondre is the guy. And some of those snaps came from the pass protection offense. So I think this is Travion's offense, and I think he's going to have a huge game tonight.
All right. So that's music to my ears. For the listeners that they want to keep at home, I have Travion Henderson, and I'm down 12 points, and they have Tyron Tracy. So, okay, there's still a chance. It doesn't feel great, but if we can get one of those, big, 20-point Travion Henderson games, against this really bad Giants defense, I think that'd be good. Jackson Dart is returning, which I think has to give a boost to the Giants. I don't know if it's going to be enough to overtake the Patriots in this game, but we've seen, the Patriots, they got taken to the brink against the Bengals last week. A team that has not been very good. The Giants have played in a lot of one-score games. They're 2-7 and they're 9 one-score games, but they played in 9 one-score games. So I might take the Giants in the points if I was a betting person, but I normally leave the bets up for Kempy. They did not ask the question, but we have someone that typically asks us, in a hypothetical world, if you get to put $100 on any person to score a touchdown, who would it be?
I am going to go with Jackson Dart tonight. I think he's plus 200 or something like that. I think he's going to run one in. I think he's going to explore the options. It's going to be good for you and Tyrone Tracy because he's going to steal a goal line ball from him, and he'll run it in for the end zone.
Yeah, I really like that one. I don't know how to top that because that was such a good pick. Because there's obviously the running backs for the Patriots are the easy answers, and we don't like to pick the easy ones. The pass catchers are hit or miss. So I could throw a dart at a Matt Collins because, why not?
Mm-hmm.
And then, so yeah, I'll go Matt Collins. See what funny outfit he wears walking to the stadium this week, and he gets in the end zone as my hypothetical guy. Anything else you want to talk about this game?
I do like Theo Johnson. I think he's becoming a solid tight end that you might not have to necessarily throw to dartboard. I think you can start him sometimes with confidence, especially with now that there's no more Russell Wilson in the picture. You can trust Dart to throw it when he needs to. Jameis was fun for a little bit there. But I think this game is going to come down to fantasy-wise, who gets those goal line carries for the Patriots, because I think it's going to be a big running game.
Yeah, I think that's it. I'm glad you brought up Theo Johnson because he's looked really good. Now, his better weeks did come with Jameis Winston, I believe. That's how it appeared to me. Now that it's start back, does he still get involved? But he seems to be a solid hand guy, so I appreciate you bringing him up. But I think that's all for this game. I do want to circle back. Smarty threw some more things in here. So if you remember, he was the guy asking about Blake Corum for dropping Alvin Kamara. He threw in there that his running backs are Javonte Williams, Jalen Warren, and Kenneth Work. So more he's doing this more as like or Kenneth Walker. I don't know what I just said, but Kenneth Walker. But this is more about other people picking him up. But then he also mentioned Adonai Mitchell, Blake Corum, and Brenton Strange are guys that are available and look interesting to him. He's Strange over Schultz as a backup. He also has Tyler Warren, and then Kamara for one of those two. If you don't have Kyron, I think that changes this a little bit for me. I think I would prioritize Brenton Strange over Schultz in general, and Warren, who has been elite. I would definitely have a backup tight end because, again, that leg injury for Daniel Jones looks to really be bothering him. And if this team has to turn back to Anthony Richardson, I don't know what that does for the offense. I don't know what that does for Tyler Warren. So I want to have a backup plan for that. And then you mentioned Adonai Mitchell. Since you don't have Kyron Williams, would you actually rather have him than the handcuff and potentially preventing a Blake Corum?
Yeah, I think at this point, I think you have a strong running back core as it is. Maybe you want to explore your wide receivers a little bit and pick up at Adonai Mitchell because at this point he could be that high ceiling guy that you might need to plug and play and see if he can elevate, especially in the last 2 weeks of the season. I'm not sure of the Jets schedule, but if it's a juicy matchup, he could be somebody that even gets a flex consideration in the next 2 or 3 weeks.
No, I like that. I think I'm with you. Since you're not the Kyron owner, and there's still a chance that Kyron even plays this week because he was able to return to the game, I would pivot to Strange to be my top target, then Adonai Mitchell. But I still think you can drop Kamara for Adonai Mitchell at this point. The Jets have the Dolphins this week, so it is a plus-er matchup. The Dolphins are like a middle tier team, and then it's the Jags and the Saints. So those are some teams to pay attention to. But Kempy, I can't thank you enough for hopping on the show with me today. Hopefully George and Bree are enjoying their time. But any last thoughts or concerns or anything you want to add in here?
No, I think I'm ready for the fantasy playoffs. Like I said, a month from now, you will know who won your league. It's crazy to think the season has gone by this quick, but thanks for having me on, Cody. It's great talking.
Awesome. As always, thanks for Kempy for hopping on this episode of the Couch Podcast. Reminder, we are live Mondays and Thursdays, 6:30 p.m. Eastern, Facebook, Twitch, YouTube. You can follow us on social media, Facebook, all those places I just mentioned, plus Twitter, TikTok, good places. And ask us questions there. We're always answering the DMs, getting you guys ready. A lot of questions probably coming away week 14. We'll be back Thursday breaking down the week 14 slate. I'm Cody Roadcap. That's Kempy. And I will talk to you all on Thursday.